Thank you very much. And I'm going to change the tone a bit of what we're talking about here, as well as the language. Four things I'm covering this. Oh, and if you want to know why I've got that silly picture on the front, well, you can ask me a question about it. There's three of us who've written this, but I'm the only one who's here, either in person or online, because it's like 4 o'clock in the morning in Korea. For some reason, Walsan didn't want to be up to come along to this. So I'm left here holding the baby. But if you've got any questions, ask Walsan. Now, why does this not appear to be moving? Why do I press? Yeah, I did that. The truck is stalled.
Yeah.
Okay. We have action.
We have it, Bob.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the concept of safe rates, hence the title, which is basically an attempt to find a way of remunerating truck drivers who are mainly independent contractors, they're not employees, remunerating the journeys so that people are able to drive safely, hence the term safe rates. So the first part of this is about the New South Wales policy experiment, which has really been in place since about 1979. But I spoke about this last year, so I'm not going to go into very much detail at all. The chair told me that he had a baseball bat, so I'm not sure that he does, but just in case, I'll skip through that bit pretty quickly. I'll then move into more recent developments this year in Australia. The Korean experiment, which is underway and up for grabs before some conclusions. So briefly, what happened in New South Wales was the law was changed in 1979 to enable the New South Wales Industrial Commission, it's an independent tribunal, to set the rates of payment for hauling truckloads of goods from one part of New South Wales to another. And these are payments to independent contractors, so they're not a wage. It's a payment for the service. There was another experiment introduced. Oh, you want me to state this? Oh, okay. Sorry, interpreters. See, I made a comment earlier. I should be responsible, shouldn't I? Okay, so there was that New South Wales experiment that commenced in 1979. It's still underway. The legislation still is in place despite 4 changes of government. There was a short-lived experiment at the federal level, the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal, which tried to do something slightly similar across the whole of Australia. It didn't last very long. There was a change of government and it was abolished. I talked last time about why these systems were introduced, the actors and the institutions involved. I've really said enough about that. I think I've got the key message across, which was that about the nature of the experiment, which is about remunerating independent contractors, in effect, on a form of, it's a hybrid of piece rates and time rates. And the impact, just to refresh one's memory, especially for almost all of you who weren't there, I identified a statistically significant reduction in road deaths, or fatal road accidents, to be precise, in the group that was the prime object of this policy, that is large truck drivers in New South Wales. There's been a structural decline in road deaths in the country, but it's only in the articulated trucks in New South Wales where you see this big reduction, basically more than twice what it is in the other states. So the key outcomes from it were identifiable improvements in road safety. About a couple of hundred lives have been saved over the years. you couldn't really make an assessment just on a couple of years of data because the data goes up and down like a yo-yo. And so you've got to look at it over a long period of time to see the impact. And also Queensland, the state of Queensland, the third largest state in Australia, is about to legislate a similar model to New South Wales for independent courier drivers. So what's happened in Australia this year? And that is a little image reflect. It's from the top of a press release that I'll come to shortly. In New South Wales, interestingly, the experiment was widened beyond truck drivers, basically, or beyond big trucks to cover little trucks. And it's big trucks have basically been part of the gig economy since the 19th century, long before platforms were invented. But most recently, the trucking companies or the logistics companies, Amazon in particular, have introduced a new gig economy variant of the platform, which basically operates a lot like Uber. So you had all these small truck drivers picking up parcels from Amazon, or Amazon Flex as they called it, and carting them all over the place, being paid very much on a piece rate basis, similar to how Uber works and Uber Eats and all those things. There was a decision in early 2022, in January of this year, of this independent tribunal, that basically set minimum rates of payment for these objects. And that is one of the first instances globally of direct regulation of remuneration for courier drivers or anybody like it. So that's quite an important step in policy formation. Basically, it's identified a way of regulating a part of the gig economy, drawing on an old experiment. Nationally, it's interesting to see that although we had this short-lived experiment at the national level in Australia from 2012 to 2016 of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal, big political campaign to get rid of it, and led by the Conservative parties and some of the trucking companies and clients. By this year, when a new Labor government has got elected, there's suddenly a consensus amongst the parties, basically organised by the union, no doubt about it, but a consensus in favour of regulation. So I was at this round table of industry parties held in Parliament House just a couple of months ago, and there's all these people around the table, not only this various state trucking organisations, Uber, DoorDash, Coles, Woolworths, the big retailers, all they're basically agreeing, yes, we need some form of regulation. They wouldn't all say safe rates, but that's basically what it involves. And that is something the Minister foreshadowed is going to happen. Probably be introduced in legislation next year. It will probably give the powers to the Fair Work Commission, which is the national independent tribunal, the power to do similar things to what's being done in New South Wales, with a few variations on it. But broadly speaking, that's what it's going to do. And the context of this is concerns in the industry about safety, all these people driving off the road and dying. It's not good for the image of the industry. It's not good for profits, actually. And of course, there's this general concern about the gig economy. How do you regulate the gig economy? It's not just an issue in Australia, of course, it's an issue for all of you here. So that's something we're going to see next year, specifically about the road transport industry, but the government is also consulting on ways of regulating in the gig economy. And that wasn't the specific focus of this roundtable, but it is the focus of a consultation process that's happening around the country. And I expect something broadly similar to the road transport regulation will be available for the gig economy generally. Exactly its form, it's very hard to know yet, but something is going to happen. Now, the Korean safe rates experiment. Koreans don't muck around with industrial disputes, I can tell you. They're out there on the streets. Korea basically brought in this system of safe rates. It it took effect a bit over about 3 years ago, actually, after a long period of campaigning. About 2 decades ago, the Korean Public Transport Workers Union, or Public Sector and Transport Workers Union, I should say, formed a division, and they called it Truck Sol, as in Truck Solidarity. And since then, they've engaged in a number of strikes. They struck the first time in 2002, and they've had a series of strikes totaling about 9 since then. That's 9 nationwide strikes, plus a whole number of individual strikes in individual locations, all in support of some form of regulation of rates for truck drivers. Around about 2013, there started to be international cooperation between Truck Sol and the Transport Workers Union Australia, which is responsible for that regulation in Australia I've just been talking about. And then shortly afterwards, the International Transport Workers Federation got involved, and they've also been involved in the ILO, the International Labour Organisation. In 2018, the Parliament passed safe rates legislation, which basically set minimum payments for drivers of certain types of trucks, container trucks, and bulk cement trucks. The vast majority of those container trucks for transport between any 2 points in Korea. But the legislation had a 3-year sunset clause on it, a great trick, which means that it expires at the end of this year. And so there's a big dispute on at the moment about whether the sunset clause should be abolished so that the legislation will actually continue in perpetuity. Of course, there's not much point in having it if it's going to expire, and that some of the parties have already withdrawn from the mechanisms involved in deliberation. Of course, they say, oh, it's about to expire. And the second issue, of course, is expanding it beyond container trucks and bulk cement trucks to lots of other types of heavy vehicles as well. There was an 8-day strike, a huge 8-day strike, cost the country billions of dollars. I mean, like I said, they don't muck around. A few months ago, there's pressure being put on the ruling party that has the presidency. The opposition parties, they control the parliament, but of course they don't control the administration. By the union, they got support from the International Transport Workers Federation, had an international union delegation a few weeks ago. That's where one of those earlier photos came from. That's where I got this. And they've had a forum in the parliament. Bills have been debated in the National Assembly. There's about 3 bills relating to various aspects of this starting in September. As of this week, the outcome is still unknown. We don't know whether it seems like the opposition party, they're basically a social democratic party, are going to support change, but the ruling party, Conservative Party, is much more reluctant to. They'll only do it if they really see themselves as being forced to. Some of the trucking companies, interestingly, are supporting it because you have the clients at the top of the food chain who push rates down onto the trucking companies. They then push rates down onto the drivers. So there's one of the differences between the New South Wales and the Korean legislation is that in New South Wales, you're basically fixing the rates of payment for the delivery of the trucks. In Korea, you're fixing the rates of payment for the delivery of the trucks, but also what the clients, what the big retailers and so on will pay the trucking companies. So the trucking companies say to the drivers, we have to pay you low because we're forced to buy these big guys. And so the Korean legislation in some ways is an improvement, a big improvement on the New South Wales legislation because it attacks things at both those levels. There's other differences between the systems. In Australia, it's basically an independent tribunal, both at state and national level. In Korea, there's not so much a history of tribunals. So you've got a multi-party committee that actually formally decides these things. The coverage, I've already mentioned those differences in there. And I've just talked a second ago about the differences in the levels of rates. And that means that, in a sense, there's more accountability down the supply chain in Korea than in New South Wales. And that's one of the things the Transport Workers Union is aiming to redress when the federal legislation is introduced in Australia next year. But both of those systems have some similarities as well, apart from the obvious ones, but they both have an impact that goes outside the formal coverage. So in Australia, you have legal bargaining. In New South Wales, you have the legal capacity for unions to bargain on behalf of the owner drivers, even where there's not an agreement, a contract agreement in place. And indeed, that and the political pressure generally has encouraged Uber and DoorDash to come to agreements. There's a formal agreement between Uber and the TW that came out about 3 weeks before this parliamentary agreement that I mentioned. And that really it's Uber demonstrating once again that it will basically accept almost any form of regulation that's forced upon it, as long as it doesn't require people to be redefined as employers. And the systems also mean that you have safe rates that cover more groups of people than just are formally permitted. So in Korea, for example, there's about 14% of truckies in Korea are covered by the legal safe rate system. But there's another 40% of truckies who are covered by informal agreements between the union and the trucking companies about rates of pay. So that 40%, they're outside the law at the moment, can't legally take industrial action, but they do it anyway. And of course, what they're after is to get that whole circle covered, to get 100% of coverage by the legal system. But of course, in both cases, you need to have the union to help enforcement, but the system does improve unionisation. This is a chart that shows how unionisation in the Cheongnam regional branch, which is the biggest branch close to Seoul, big petrochemical port complex near Seoul. Well, you can see it's gone up from around about 1,200 to well over 2,000 in the space of a few years. Nationally, well, the thick black line there is the bulk cement sector. The dark blue area is the container sector. You can see in the container sector, for example, it's been 150% increase in the number of people, the number of drivers, they're all owner drivers who are union members, 4 times that growth you get in the bulk cement sector. And overall, you get growth in trucks sold, even outside those 2 areas. Of course, makes people feel the union is powerful. So, and that's a good thing. And you get most of the complaints that you get about payments not being legally done are in that bottom rate. Remember how I said there's a top rate between the trucking companies and the clients, and a bottom rate between the trucking companies and the drivers. It's mainly in the bottom rate that the complaints are taking place, and it's all in the bottom rate where fines have occurred. There's not many fines occurred, so there's still big problems with compliance with enforcement, but that's one of the things that they're working on. So conclusions: the safe rate system can be stable and long-lived, and it leads to improvements in safety. You can't assess its impact on safety after only a short time, but it critically, it has implications potentially throughout the whole of the gig economy. One way or another, you think about this, this is a system that's basically taken the situation that exists in a specific industry and worked out how to regulate it, right? And they've done different forms of regulation in Korea and in New South Wales. And they'll do, and part of those differences basically reflect the fact that, they're learning as they're going. So they're making mistakes along the way, like in New South Wales, only getting part of the supply chain. But there's also, specific circumstances in each sector that have shaped how the regulation takes place. The involvement, for example, of an independent tribunal in New South Wales versus a committee of the various interest groups in Korea. So you work out the situation that's relevant in each case, and then how do we find the best way of regulating, of in effect providing something equivalent to a minimum wage or higher for the workers, so they're not driving themselves to death. So it's a valuable experiment with many implications. I won't go through those because the guy's got the baseball bat. But it does show, I think Korea in particularly, if it can survive, will show the benefits from regulation of the whole supply chain, not just the bottom. Thank you.